go into Grandma's lap, there's a real body feel that I can come back to. It was just like lots of the little kid worries that were in my mind. My head could just go out, and I didn't have to stay looking like this or wondering what was going to happen or what I needed to protect myself against, but there was really just a very safe place there. Another time recently, to try to illustrate what I'm saying, a few years back, I noticed outside my office window that there was a cat out there, and a wild cat. And this poor little thing was coming in, and it was very thin. And I could see it out there. Well, I have bird feeders and bird baths around because I love birds and I like to watch them. So this little cat had decided this was hunting ground. So I thought both to protect the birds and to help this poor thing that looked like he wasn't doing too well as a hunter, I'd get the little bowl and put some food out by the garage door and see if the cat wanted it. So I did that. And the food disappeared, but I wasn't sure whether that cat or other cats or raccoons or possums or what was going to eat it, what was eating it. And then one day I was outside after maybe several weeks of putting the food in, and I heard this hissing sound. And I looked around the corner, and there, just sticking its head around the corner, was this little cat hissing at me, because the cat was apparently eating the food, and this was its territory. I was in its territory. Didn't realize I was the provider, and it was hissing at the food source. Didn't realize that. So I thought, oh, well, this is working. This poor little thing is getting some food. So I continued to put the food out. And then he would come a little more bold, and pretty soon he would stand in full view. And other times he would hide behind a single blade of grass thinking he was hidden, thinking he was the big leopard act out there, and he was just crouched down on a single blade of grass in front of him. And I began to feel a lot of affection for this little cat. So after maybe 3 or 4 months, he would get to the point where he would come right up while I was putting the food into the dish. I couldn't make any fast moves or anything like that, or he'd take off and be gone. And then finally one day, the little cat, while I was putting the food in, he brushed against my leg. Well, I was a goner after that. And it wasn't more than about a month or so later than when I'd go outside and sit in the chair, up he would jump and he would be on my lap. Well, one of these days I was sitting out there and the cat was on my lap and he put his head against here and he was just snoring and purring away, everything. And I thought to myself, well, and I don't like cats to begin with. It goes way, way back to when my sister had a cat and I had a dog. My dog killed my sister's cat under the house. My father said, you've got to crawl under there and take the dead cat out so we don't smell a cat. From then on, I was against cats. So this cat's sitting on my lap now, and he's sleeping against my tummy. And I said, boy, this thing got through to me. See, he really got through to me. This cat is a real gift to me. When you are with that part of you, with that kind of presence, then it trusts you. And then that place inside begins to say what it needs to say about that pain, that frustration, that anger, that hurt, whatever. And then it feels different. You carry it differently inside. That whole process of focusing can go forward. It needs to be brought out there. We find in physical healing the exact same thing, don't we? You've been reading and hearing about this. That when you have a headache, that when you've got a backache, that when you've got these physical symptoms, if you can be with that physical pain in a more affectionate in that way, a more open, a more present, a more caring, a more loving, a more gentle, whatever you want to call it, way, that the healing process, physical healing process, goes forward much faster, and sometimes, in fact, just simply the symptoms disappear.
And for those of you who are looking for different ways to be with difficult places inside, one of the things that's helped me a lot, because when I first started to do this, there's a part of me that, I want to get control over this, so I'll be nice to it. for a while, up to a point, and then I'm going to get it, and get it out, you see. And so what I learned was helpful for me was I would ask myself a question. Can I be with this hurting place inside without trying to fix it? You see, can I let go of all my need to fix, to change, to make it go away, to make it better, to make it invisible? And can I just honor it enough to say, hey, I'm here, and I care enough to be with you as you are. If you want to change, fine. If you don't want to change, I'm just committed to spending some time with you. And I just found for myself, it just helped change my attitude and my body way of being with it. Because as long as I wanted to gain control over it, I'd kind of have a half-assed affection. It'd be there, but there was a hook in it. I wanted to get control over this. I wanted to stop it. I wanted it to go away. And as long as that's in there, it's like the virus is in the system. That made a difference. And Gene Genlin's way of putting this, he said, with some of these things, you have to pitch your tent next to them and go camping with them. You see, it's a whole different mindset and a different body stance. And that's a body thing. Find your own body way of connecting with it that is not pushing it away. And nobody can tell you how to do this. I mean, we can give examples from our own experience, but ultimately you've got to find your own way. And I would encourage you that if when you're searching, if you find anything that has a little edge that brings a smile inside you, just really honor and reverence that. Because anything that breaks the mold of rigid control, and usually humor does, and the little smile tells you, I've hit an edge of something. Here's a way in. And really make special place for that. Because that'll teach you, and that is your teacher, just as affection is your teacher.
See, affection is our body's way of opening to gift. Affection is a word that we've put on our body's way, not just the mental activity, our body's way of opening to gift and letting gift inside, of being changed by it. So when we're dealing with affection and all these things, we're dealing with the physiology of grace, if you want to put it that way. The physiology of prayer. The body language of spirituality, not the ideas and the concepts of gift or grace. The process is the message. What process? It's a process of being grace, the process of wholeness, the process of holiness, process of becoming me, process of allowing the truth of me to be born during these 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years of my life. The process is the message, and the message is that the process is possible. As Paul would put it, thanks be to God in Jesus Christ. Because we live in this body that constantly surrounds us like the little fish in the water with all these gifts wanting to bring us to fullness of birth. Gifts of people, of life, of nature, of sorrow and suffering, of all the things that happen to us that are there, but so many of them we won't let in. We just won't let them tell their story in us. And usually it's pretty far along in life before, as many people say, we've heard it so many times and maybe know it ourselves, that the biggest gifts oftentimes were the things that hurt us most, or the suffering we went through. And we know that as we get older, that the wise people are somehow the people that let the suffering be owned, didn't reject it, somehow found new strength, new meaning, new understanding of themselves, of life itself. They owned that experience rather than pushing it away. But see, it's this pushing away, and it's finding a practical way for each one of you. You have to find your own way to go from this to this, with all those things inside that come up, whether it's this week or next year, whatever, until that becomes for you just as natural as breathing in and breathing out. You turn the whole thing of what we've been indoctrinated in for generations and centuries, you turn it all around inside the whole way you live with those feelings inside that we label as so-called bad feelings. When the same thing is true of our positive feelings. They oftentimes need as much nurturing. Abe Maslow, the man I did my doctoral dissertation on, he said people who are creative, very healthy, who are what he called meta-motivated, people whose lives are constantly moving forward, he said they get just as sick as people who are deficiency motivated, don't have basic needs handled if they don't nurture their creativity and move forward. So it doesn't really it's not a question of the so-called bad or the so-called good or positive feelings or negative feelings. It has nothing to do with any of that. All the things that our body tells us through our feelings and our sensations are important, whether it's excitement or it's joy or it's enthusiasm or it's depression or it's sadness or it's anger, whatever it is. All of that in us is a tremendous resource and a tremendous part of our intelligence, of our body trying to go forward and to grow, and the story of our life, the pages needing to turn over. And the unfortunate thing is that some of them, we've said, some pages are going to be put in a box and we lock the door and we put that in the closet. In other pages, well, we'll consider those. And so naturally, our life gets stuck and it can't go forward. All feelings are precious. And all feelings, there is no moral judgment on feelings. Fine if you're angry and then you go in and pull a pistol out of the drawer and you shoot somebody. We can talk about moral and immoral, good and bad in the sense of behaviors that come out of those feelings. That's a different story, but feelings in themselves are neutral. There's no such thing as good or bad or religious or unreligious or proper or improper. Feelings just happen in us. And they're part of the human mechanism of communication. They're part of the intelligence of the human organism trying to express itself, and it expresses itself not in the ordinary ways we've been taught that human beings express themselves, which is through speaking and concepts and language and so forth like that. They don't express themselves that way. They express themselves through body sensations and through motions and through various different symbolic ways. That's why oftentimes our dreams are so important, is because our dreams are trying to do exactly what we do in focusing. In that relaxed state of just sleeping like this, our body is trying to tell us things that we're not listening to when we're awake. And so we have these crazy dreams about something and wild things and whatever they are. And if you follow through with focusing with your dreams, but when you wake up, instead of trying to say, now what's all that about? And what was that crazy dream about? You'll sit with, how did the dream feel inside? Just as you would sit with any other issue.
Now, in this age, we're just so mesmerized by information, as though information is somehow going to save us. And Jenlin has a nice illustration. And just if you imagine that there was a signpost outside the front here, and it said New York 22 miles, and imagine that you saw someone who wanted to get to New York, and in order to get to New York, what they did is they walked out the front of the building, they walked down, and then they climbed the signpost to get to New York. And that's precisely what we're doing over and over and over again. We mistake the information for the reality. Knowing is not the process of changing. The information is not the changing. The changing is working through something in our body. It's finding our way into how our body carries it. And that's the challenge that we face as we relearn how we change as human beings. It's not because we get the right thinking in our head, and then that makes it different. Because in so many instances, and we have so much data to show this, you can give people the accurate data why they are the way they are, and they still go on feeling bad. It just doesn't change it. But when they own and allow something inside them to tell its story, then the inner landscape changes and they feel different. And affection is a big piece of that. Affection is a great teacher for you because you don't feel affection in your head.
I would always be listening in the dining room table for any conversation around something in their lives that they had affection for. And I can remember, for example, one older woman who, at the first time I sat with her at lunch, talked about her little grandson. So as soon as she started to focus in my group, what did I do? Guided her and asked her if she could hold that pain like she would hold her grandson. That just does it. Another woman was, when she introduced herself in the small groups like you did this morning, she talked about her concern about whether her cat was going to be fed this weekend. Well, I didn't let that go. They did the same thing. Another member once in Chicago, a priest, an older priest, and he was having a very hard time with focusing. And I tried everything I could think of to help him, and we just weren't getting anywhere. Some 45, 50 minutes we'd gone, and had something very painful that he needed to be with, and I just didn't seem to be able to help him, and he was really stuck. So I remembered what he had talked about in the opening session, talked about how he was born and raised in Kentucky, and I looked at him, I saw his age, so I thought, he goes back to the time when we used to have front porches. We weren't all stacked up in concrete buildings. And Kentucky's got that wonderful, gentle climate and rolling hills, and I thought to myself, I'll bet he had a front porch when he was a kid. So I just said, in desperation, more than anything else, when I was working with him, I said, when you were a young man or you were a child, did you have a front porch in your house? He said, yes. I said, did you have one of those swings out on the front porch where you can get out in the summertime and just swing back and forth? He said, yes. I said, did you ever use it much? He said, oh, yeah, especially when I was a teenager. I used to sit out on that porch and swing back there and wonder whether I wanted to be a priest or not and what I was going to do with my life and so forth. And I said, could you go back in your memory to that porch and sit on that porch now and put that whole thing that hurts so much right next to you and just swing on the porch with it sitting right next to you? And he just was quiet for a minute. He said, yes, I can do that. And he said, in fact, I can even smell the honeysuckle. And I said, all right, now just let that place know that it's right there next to you, that whole place inside that hurts, that whole issue, and just be there on the porch with it, and just swing with it and see if it wants to tell you something. And by golly, that's what, for the first time, he could own it, even though it kind of had to be next to him there, and then we just really moved with that. A couple more examples that might help you with practical kind of body ways of trying to position yourself so that those slings and arrows of outrageous fortune aren't bouncing off a shield all the time. We're letting them in and letting them tell their story. One of the ways we notice that when you're sitting and focusing, you can combine different things. For example, what I will do is that because of my background in working with children for so long when I was younger and my love for kids, I will, when I'm usually focusing, I will hold it like I used to hold my little nephew. But I'll also put my hand someplace. Let's say I feel that right here. So I'll put my hand and let my hand say, with just the physical touch, I'm here and I care. And I find that that's often just like a further physical effort to let that place know I'm really there. Or maybe sometimes when I feel that, sometimes I'll get it up behind the eyes and I'll feel like my eyes ache right behind there. So just putting my hand back here, or just kind of like massaging this part and just saying, I hear you. You know, I'm here for you. We can just be together now for a while and listen to each other. I'll take care of you. If you want to tell me something, I'm here and listening. See? And it's just that physical act of being that way, where maybe it's pain in the back of my neck or my shoulders or something like that. That's oftentimes a help. Another example, another possibility, and all of these are just suggestions that you might try it sometime and see if any of them are helpful for you. One I just stumbled on that I call my teddy bear way. And my mom, who is 92 now, about 5 or 6 years ago, when she decided that maybe she'd better do some giving away of things to the children, and in the package she gave me was my old teddy bear. Well, this old teddy bear was very special when I was a little boy, and so special that I, of course, had to take him to bed every night, and I hugged him, and I wouldn't go to sleep without my teddy bear and all that sort of thing. And I loved the teddy bear so much I loved all the fur off the little bear. So my mother had to make him a little pair of coveralls and a little shirt because he was really naked now. And she didn't want me to love him, and pretty soon the stuffing would come out. And one day when I was writing this book, I was working on this book, and I was stuck, which seems to be my normal way of writing. Like you call it writer's block or artist's block. Or anybody who does creative work knows what I'm talking about. And how to be with that and be with that in a productive way is really the key to any artist's future, or really creating anything at all that's original and worthwhile. So I happened to go into my closet for some reason, carrying this block and this stuckness about writing. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to do it and how to proceed. And I had focused on it, and nothing had happened. Nothing had changed. So I happened to open the closet door, and this bag tumbled out, this plastic bag, and out tumbled the teddy bear, and just fell on the floor, came out of the bag. And I picked up the bag and the bear, and as soon as I picked up the bear, it just came to me. I know how I have to be with that writer's block. Just like I was, I need to hold it like I held that teddy bear when I was a kid. So what I decided I would do that night, I'll just imagine that on my pillow next to me is my old teddy bear. And I can remember how I'd put my arm around that teddy bear and just go to sleep with my arm around the teddy bear. I'm going to put this stuck place right in that spot on my pillow, put my arm right around it like the teddy bear, and go to bed with that same feel for that stuck place that I had for the teddy bear, because I can bring it right back up. I know just how I felt so present and connected to this. So I did it that night, and by golly, I wasn't asleep more than about 2 hours, and I woke straight up, and I knew exactly how to write the chapter in the book. It just like it instead of pushing it away and fighting it by just being with it in a teddy bear way, it could tell me what it wanted to tell me.
Today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic.
last suggestion, if none of these seem to work, then I would always ask a place inside, how do you need me to be with you so you can be my teacher? How do you need me to be with you so you can tell me what you're trying to tell me? Or so you could be my guide? That way. See, any phrase like that that helps change the relationship inside. That's why focusing is at the heart of peacemaking. Focusing is reconciliation. Focusing is forgiving your enemies, those enemies that you've just fallen into considering to be your enemies.